So let me call this meeting to order and have a roll call.
Cynthia Hoyle,
Yes, I'm here.
Annie Adams,
There
Here.
she is. Say here.
Kara Trudek, here, Audrey Ishii, Susan Jones, Jeff Marino,
Here.
Craig Schunkweiler,
Here.
Lily Wilcock.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great. All right, so now we need approval of the agenda. Is anyone going to make a motion to approve the agenda?
Move that the agenda for tonight be approved.
I second that.
All those in favor? All right, so next up, public input. Anyone want? Oh, I'm sorry. Oops. Approval of minutes from previous meetings. Does anybody have any comments, changes on the meeting minutes? All right, do we have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the minutes.
I second that.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved as submitted. And now we're at public input. And we do not have any public input. So, unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business that anybody wants to discuss? Don't see any. All right. Then we will move on to new business. And the first item we have here is the pedestrian master plan, and Brad Bennett is going to present that for us. There we go.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come speak to you this evening. I think this is an exciting, first step into the pedestrian master plan. I do want to stress that this is a first step. So what we're going to be talking about tonight is just kind of the initial scope for it. We haven't entered into any sort of agreement or contract with anybody to actually perform it. We are initially looking at doing it with Regional Planning Commission. They had done the bike master plan. They had also done a sidewalk inventory for us that some of you have seen the presentation that we did last year on that, where they had received a $250,000 grant from IDOT to do an inventory of all the sidewalks in Champaign, Urbana, and Savoy, looking at the condition as well as the ADA accessibility of those ramps. So they would seem like a strong and good partner to do the master plan with. So looking at, some of the benefits of doing a master plan, obviously we're a bike-friendly, pedestrian-friendly community, so, we would strive to create a more walkable, livable, healthy community. We think the pedestrian mode is an important mode of transportation, even for people to work or to connect with their neighbors or do local neighborhood shopping. It would obviously promote healthy living benefits, getting people out moving, benefits their health. Would contribute to a cleaner environment. There's no pollution generated by walking as opposed to other modes of transportation. And then I think, probably the biggest benefit of having a master plan would be it would help, establish policies, programs, and projects that will enhance pedestrian safety, comfort, and accessibility to Urbana neighborhoods. It would also help us prioritize, how we build out the sidewalk system within Urbana. So what I'd like to go through next is kind of the components of the master plan. So it's kind of broken down into 5 components, and we'll kind of briefly go over some of the activities that would be within each component. So starting out, there would be a pre-planning component, kind of the kickoff component if you want to think of it. So there'd be an initial meeting, with city staff, to get that process going. We'd also kick off the public engagement process review, as far as how things are distributed to the public and how input is solicited from the public. as well as the website creation, which would be one of kind of the centerpieces of communication for the master plan as far as getting information out to the public and then getting comments back from them. Moving next into what would be the existing conditions phase. So this would involve data collection and analysis, looking at plan and policy reviews. There would be 2 community meetings where we would invite the community to come in and get information from them regarding the pedestrian infrastructure in Urbana. One of the things I think that we kind of learned from the bike master plan would be, or we'd have to factor into this is, how do we really drive participation in these community meetings? I know for the bike master plan, they tried doing the neighborhood-wide meetings, and the turnout maybe wasn't as high as anticipated. So I think one of the things we maybe explore with this is, is it possible maybe to partner with some community groups or organizations to help get more people out? I mean, I think another challenge is going to be with pedestrian master plan is, we don't really have an advocacy group like we do for bikes with the pedestrians. So, we had talked kind of internally as staff. I think we'll definitely want to involve the PACE organization to get their input on, people that have disabilities and how they interact with the pedestrian infrastructure, as well as, probably want to try to get HUNA and WUNA and SUNA all involved in the process too. There would be a walking preferences survey done as part of the existing conditions phase, and then all that would kind of accumulate into a draft report, and that draft report would be vetted through city staff to provide an initial review and input for that. Then moving into the future plans phase. So this is where the goals, objectives, and performance measures would be established. And I think this process is fairly similar to what we went through for the bike master plan. There would be a generation of pedestrian strategies as far as, how to enhance the system and provide better connectivity. There would be a series of recommendations that would come up as part of the report. And there would be some public workshops as well as part of the future plans phase. Then moving into the implementation phase, this is where they would actually prepare an implementation plan. Once again, that plan would initially be vetted through city staff, and that would be finalized out. And then finally, in the last phase, the plan approval phase, there would be a draft report put together, once again, initially vetted by city staff. Then that report would be presented to BPAC for their review and comment, then Plan Commission, and then finally City Council. There would be a 30-day public comment period. And then the final plan would also kind of go through a similar process, initially with city staff, then through BPAC, Plan Commission, and City Council for adoption. So as far as scheduling going for the master plan, it will be a fairly lengthy process. You can see we're looking at 18 months from kind of start to finish. The longest phases are the evaluation of the existing conditions, and then the future plans and plan approval taking significant periods of time as well. And then as far as costs go, this is what the Regional Planning Commission had put together as far as what the breakdown in costs. So we're looking at about a total cost of the study of about $36,100. And once again, kind of going along with, the longer the completion time for a particular phase, the higher the cost. So you can see the existing conditions has, the highest cost because the most work is involved with that. But then the plan approval and future plan phase is also involving some higher costs because of the amount of time involved in that. So moving on, what would be the next steps in the process? And this is where we're looking for some input from BPAC, but we'd like to finalize the scope of services for the pedestrian master plan study. Once we had a final scope of services, we could negotiate with the Regional Planning Commission and establish an agreement to execute the master plan. And once that was in place, then we could look at kind of kickstarting that process and holding, a kickoff meeting and getting that going. So with that, I'll kind of open it up to any questions or comments the group would have.
Craig?
So, Brad, with the bicycle master plan, it became an addendum to the comprehensive plan.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what this plan would be also as part of the comprehensive plan?
Yeah, that's a great question. I did talk to Libby Tyler about that, and that would be one of the benefits of going through Plan Commission is we could have it added on to the comprehensive plan.
So then any development that took place, then we would ask them to adhere to this
Correct.
pedestrian master plan.
Yeah, that's an excellent point to bring up as well. As part of that existing condition, they're going to look through our land and subdivision ordinance to make sure that the policies we set forth and the requirements we have there for new development or redevelopment projects support the pedestrian infrastructure and, make sure that comes, because obviously the best time to, install sidewalks is at the time that areas are being built out. It's terribly difficult and costly to come in and try to retrofit them, 10, 20 years, after the initial subdivision was built. So that's an excellent point.
Brad, in those work elements that you had listed, is any of that done by the city staff, or is that all done by CCR?
Well, the Regional Planning Commission would be the kind of the lead effort on this. I think city staff would provide some support as far as project management and maybe helping making some of the arrangements, whether it's, location of the meetings or reaching out to certain groups to get them to participate in the meeting. But really the Regional Planning Commission will be the one, kind of with the boots on the ground as far as leading the effort. Yeah, that's where most of the costs are. Like I said, we'd probably be more kind of as a project manager role and maybe helping out with some of the logistics when necessary.
I just want there to be a better why for why we're doing this. Like it'll increase property values, it'll increase city asset values, it'll increase, our environmental mission, it'll make a healthier Urbana, it'll increase mode shift by maybe a certain percentage, it'll open areas that are unsafe currently to pedestrians, such as trying to cross University Avenue from downtown Urbana to get to Crystal Lake with your little kids, or yourself personally. So basically things like that we're, trying to make it so people can move through the city safely, as a pedestrian. That would be that's my only thing. The why just feels kind of weak. And I know it's not, I personally don't think 36,000 is a ton of money, but, I think we can easily get that money back in the why section. So that's my only comment.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate your input. I would foresee all the things that you brought up would be actually part of the goals. I know we went through the bike master plan, and they had specific, goals targeted, as far as increasing, the amount of ridership or reducing the number of, accidents, between vehicles and pedestrians and stuff. So I think we can really kind of flush those out in the goals and policy phases. And I know one of the big things the Regional Planning Commission, has for their goals is, they want this SMART acronym, that they're measurable and targetable. And, so I think through the goals process of it, we'll be able to flesh a lot of those out and establish, what those are.
I think on the university side, we have a lot of poor pedestrian crossings to get from Urbana to the university and vice versa. And we've got a lot of jaywalking problems because we're encouraging pedestrians to kind of go nowhere from the end of Urbana roads to into the university. I think that looking at and in trying to improve this would benefit safety getting to and from the university significantly, and setting aside university issues as well. I think just to add on to what Annie's saying, I think that there are a lot of parts of Urbana that seem very unattractive or intimidating to future homeowners or developers because they're surrounded by very intimidating, usually arterial roads like University, Cunningham, Windsor, and High Cross. And those are roads that we should look at making less intimidating for our pedestrians because I think it would really improve development and real estate values and just be more fun.
Excellent points.
Some really great parks are around there too.
Yeah, I for example wanted to go to the park master plan. There was like a new master plan for Crystal Lake, and I just, it was in my head. I was like, well, no big deal, right? It's gonna be the master plan general meeting. I'll just get on my bike and bike over there. And then I was like, and I was like, I know I can just get my car and drive, but it was just kind of funny. It was one of those moments where I was like, wow, this is all sort of these little disconnected pieces that I think we could really bring together.
Oh, yeah. I have two questions.
Sure.
One, when the scope of services, would it include an executive summary for the future plan, or make sure it includes an executive summary that way, like with the bicycle master plan at the end, you know, we're out of money with the consultant, and then we're trying to get this done, and it was a little bit of a challenge. So if it's in the scope of services up front, that makes it more likely. The other question, I guess, I had kind of dovetails a little bit with Annie and Lily said, the city of Urbana currently doesn't have a transportation master plan, I guess, but they do have a comp plan, and I guess the comp plan hasn't been, it was last updated probably 10 years ago or longer. So I guess, you know, Annie and Lily were talking about getting to places. Obviously sidewalks would help, but also kind of the land use pattern or the transportation, you know, plan and how people get around kind of plays into that as well. You know, if you have a lot of large lot development that is auto-oriented, you can put a sidewalk along the side of it and it won't necessarily make an attractive location for people to walk. But if you mentioned that the policies would be taken into account as part of this process, if there's a policy for more pedestrian-oriented development in the future, that would also play into the increasing the ability for people to walk. I think there's a website that measures walkability score for various places, and my neighborhood has sidewalks on both sides of the street and lots of trails, and it's a pedestrian's dream, but there's no place to walk to. So the closest store is like a half-mile away, and it's great for recreational walking, but for transportation purposes, it's not like I could walk to work really easily because I'm still crossing arterial streets, and the crossings are not very good. So that would be my comment would be to look at the land. I don't know if land use is the right word, but future growth patterns, and if there's a way to also address existing growth patterns and development to make it more pedestrian friendly, I would like to see that included in this plan as well.
Okay. Excellent point.
Just to piggyback off of that, Jeff, I was in your neighborhood this weekend and I could not find a single place to use the restroom. It's very hard to walk around that because there's no place to go, and I think that is a huge thing. If you want to really encourage the development of your city, you should really think about having places to walk to. That's a really good point.
And just use the Jane Jacobs thing, safe and interesting. So I've been biking on Windsor on the side path there, and just trees. Like, just like trees. I know it's expensive, but that is just safe and interesting are the two sort of code words that people like to use.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely make sure that we get an executive summary in there for you.
Well, I have a couple of questions and comments. I was wondering why the existing conditions part is going to take so long, given that they already did this very extensive analysis of the sidewalks. And I just would like to know what other existing conditions they are going to be gathering data on. And you may not have the answer to that question here tonight, but they spend a lot of time and money gathering all that data, so it would be helpful for us to understand what other existing conditions are they gathering information on, since that, and I didn't understand why it would take so long.
I would wonder if we have a lot of post-war developments that do not have sidewalks. So I wonder if there is some assessment there in what would it take to get sidewalks in there, in those areas. Those were not a part of the existing conditions that with the study. The study that Brad's referring to is just, we have a sidewalk, is it in compliance or not?
Right.
Kind
But
of
we have a
inventory.
vast amount of
Right.
subdivisions that do not have sidewalks.
But it mapped where the sidewalks are, so we know there are locations where there are not sidewalks, and I guess my personal opinion is that going to each of those sites and identifying how you would put a sidewalk in is perhaps not as useful to us as making recommendations for ways in which you could put sidewalks in locations where you do not have them. Because even if you come up with a great plan for putting a sidewalk in a neighborhood, you're going to meet a lot of resistance from the property owners, and I have been through some of those discussions before. So there are other ways in which you can add sidewalks in without having to go through quite the same sort of what appears to the property owners taking away their property, even though it's city's right of way. That you are using. So I know that one thing that they will say is that they did not look at crosswalks, because I brought that up about the study that they did, that having sidewalks is one thing, but if you can't cross the street, it doesn't do very much good. And so I know they're going to say that, but I still would be interested in knowing what additional data is going to be gathered if possible. And the other thing I would suggest in terms of the public meetings, they should occur with other events, even if it's sometimes bigger public events, maybe including it. I assume the kickoff time is going to be sometime early next year, and we probably won't get to some of the public meetings until early spring, I'm guessing. And so is that an opportunity to say, have public input at the farmer's market or another location like that? However, in Urbana, we shouldn't underestimate people's willingness to show up. My understanding is 80 people showed up for the Curtis Road study meeting. So Urbana does, in some ways, not fit that mold. But that was a suggestion I have. It also, I think, makes it less expensive to do it, because you don't have to secure a facility and that sort of thing if somebody else has already done that for some reason. The other thing that I was wondering about in the section where you talked about the walking preferences?
Yeah, I think that's what it was referred to. Let me scroll back to it.
I was thinking that maybe one of the things that we could do there, walking preferences survey, is not just a survey, but I think it would be very interesting and informative to ask the public to take pictures of places they most like to walk and places they least like to walk, and ask them to explain why and to submit that to us. I think that would give us really nice visual information with some sort of context from people about what it is the community wants in a walking environment. And in the past, that would have required something like giving people disposable cameras, but now almost everyone has a camera on their phone, so almost anybody can take pictures and send them to us. So I think that would be really helpful to the process.
Yeah, those are all excellent points. I will get back to you as far as what the cost breakdown on the existing conditions is. I do know as part of that, I mean, they'd be looking at, past plans and reviewing, past reports, as well as, like I said, probably doing a pretty detailed review of the subdivision ordinance and zoning ordinance to, try to get with a pedestrian orientated development and make sure that, we are getting that addressed as part of any development or redevelopment project.
Okay.
So.
Does anybody else have any questions or suggestions?
I mean, please feel free, if you think of something after tonight, don't hesitate to shoot me an email or give me a call.
Okay.
We will have a little time before we finalize the scope. So if you think of anything else, I appreciate all your input tonight and have made notes, and I will look into those and get back to you.
Okay.
Could you just flip down real quick to that cost breakdown for the elements of the
Sure.
plan? Okay.
It's a pretty tight
Very
budget.
tight.
I would point out the miscellaneous, I think, is for some, printing and mailing costs and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'd just like to say, from a park district standpoint, we definitely would like to attend the meetings and be involved from the beginning. It just helps when everybody's at the table from the beginning, and
Okay.
any way that we can help or kind of mesh our plans together would be helpful for the city, I think.
Yeah, that's where I said, I think obviously they'll be looking at the trails plan and integrating that into this as
Yeah, and
as
we
well.
have some destinations we, of course,
Yeah.
want people to come to on foot, and it's not always possible.
Mm-hmm.
Got one last. I think from city staff point, these plans are very important to help guide basically the expenditure of public dollars. They also help quite a bit with the acquisition or acquiring grants. If you don't have a plan, it's hard to get the money. But if you have something that's vetted out, particularly through the public process, and I think we found that out through the bike master plan process. So I think that's something that wasn't mentioned that's very important here to keep in mind. Sometimes people ask, well, why have a plan? Well, a plan guides you to where you need to go. If you don't have a plan, you won't know where to go. Look at Jeff Marino's laughing because he's a plan.
Yeah,
guy.
I don't think you'll get that from this group.
Right.
Audrey?
And I hope that we get a chance to see the draft master plan before it has to be approved, maybe one meeting before the
That's a
meeting
great
that we
idea.
call
Yeah,
for
I'm sure
approval.
we can get you adequate
Yeah.
time to review that.
And I'm sure that it will also be, I'm sure that in the course of doing it, they'll mesh it with the bicycle master plan and with the climate action plan,
Absolutely.
which the trees that Annie mentioned are part of the climate action plan. So there's opportunity for synergy there. And Vision Zero from the bicycle master plan can be incorporated.
And that's why we have a plan. It's true. I mean, it's like it seems like I know, like, I know that people think like government moves really slow, and then you have all this stuff on paper, and I was kind of laughing about, I was like, oh, were you going to make a joke about trees and printing it on paper and stuff? But I mean, this is why we have plans, because it's like, this is what we agree on. It's not a perfect plan. It's where we agree to start and where we agree to go forward. And that's why it's important to have plans. But yeah, it's important to have plans.
And also to echo that, you talk about the importance of the plan. I'm sure that staff will, occasionally gets calls from the general public that says, why doesn't my street have a sidewalk? If you have a plan, you can say, well, this is a lower priority than, as identified in our plan, is, this other sidewalk over here. So kind of like Annie said, everybody in the community knows, oh, I will get a sidewalk in 20 years, but this other sidewalk is more strategic in linking these other things up. So yeah, it's a great opportunity for the whole community.
Well, thank you for presenting and bringing us all this information, Brad, and we look forward to hearing from you again when we get farther along in the process.
Great. I will report back.
Thanks. And the next item is the bicycle wayfinding plan, and Craig Schunkweiler is going to talk about that. I guess you're giving us an update on where we are with that.
Yeah, I mean, we're currently, we're really in the incubation stage of the scope. We will be contracting with Regional Plan Commission, who also did the bicycle master plan. We actually initially attempted to do it in-house with staff, but we have so many projects and so many demands as far as implementation. That's a lot of what my staff does. We're not planners. We are engineers and technicians that, you know, get roads resurfaced, get them built. We do design, but we do not do plans. We talked about it with community development, but I think they're too staffed to the limit. Regional Plan Commission has the, basically, they know the system well, and we've been in some talks with them. We vetted around some scope of services, but I guess what I would like to hear from the commission is what their vision would be of a wayfinding plan before we would present something, say, next meeting. So maybe think about that. You could shoot me an email too, but what do you all vision when you think of a wayfinding plan system? And maybe perhaps if you've seen other peer cities, we've done some research. I'll be honest with you, we feel that when we do this plan and begin executing or implementing it, we will actually be on the forefront in pretty much Illinois. We're not finding much, even in the collar counties up in the Chicagoland area, or even in the city of Chicago, as much as we thought we would. We're actually having to look outside of the state for, you know, some documents as guiding documents. The Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices had some things, AASHTO has some things, NACTO has some things, but really I don't think most communities have went to this next step that we're going to go to, and I view it as, again, you know, we're leaders in the bicycle arena. Now we're going to take it to another level, a visible level. So I think the commission, you know, we should think about that. We should also think about the role of the commission within this plan and how that rolls out with a steering committee, if we do have a steering committee. There's been some talk in staff of whether or not we would have one or not. Within the master plan or the bicycle master plan, we did have a steering committee. The steering committees, when we did meet, they were fairly lengthy meetings, hour and a half, 2 hours, a lot of technical detail. When I think of BPAC, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's an advisory commission. But we want to get BPAC's involvement, but are we going to talk about sign typologies, or are we going to bring from the steering committee options to BPAC to consider, or is BPAC going to be the ones that help develop the sign typologies? There's two different approaches here, so we need to think about that, and we need to think about our commitment as a commission to taking that on every month. Tentatively, we're looking at probably a year-long process with several public meetings. You know, we want to get this done right, and it needs to be done well, and I think it also will be something that will set the tone for what's done perhaps within the university system, perhaps within the city of Champaign as well.
I can share a couple of thoughts with you. I'm managing a wayfinding plan for the city of Peoria right now. And so there are a couple of different approaches that you can take. One is to have a detailed plan which actually specifies the locations and types of signs. Another approach is to have guidelines for what kinds of signs you put where, and then you sort of build the system out based on the guidelines. And I can certainly send you some examples. I know there are some in Indiana and Wisconsin and some other surrounding states that you could take a look at. And I think in terms of a steering committee, I think having a steering committee is important, but I think it might not need the same level of involvement that the bicycle master plan needed. You could do 1 or 2 meetings, I think probably would be adequate, and use BPAC to help provide some input. For example, there are different sorts of sort of a visual preference survey that you can do of different sign types. And that's something we need to get input from key stakeholders as well as from the community, is what is the look that Urbana is going for. Sort of like we did with the plan for parking, the sort of the wayfinding plan in downtown, and maybe building off of that. And I know in the Greenways and Trails plan, Kuwat's had specified some elements that would apply across the system in terms of design. But we need to take a look at that and decide how we want our signs to fit into that system, and if we want it to be more customized to Urbana. Yes, the important thing, of course, is that it work well in helping people figure out where they're going. And so the other things are, I think, important, but the main thing is that the public wants clarity in destination and distance, and being able to get where they need to go and know they're still going the right way. For example, that is when I'm bicycling in communities I haven't been in before, I need periodic reassurance that I'm still going the right direction and on the right location, in the right location. So we don't have as much off-road infrastructure as a lot of communities, so ours is mostly going to be on-street, which is different and has to fit within the MUTCD. And so I think we'd also want to involve a regional office of IDOT, because we might end up interacting with them on roadways that they have control over, and so we need their approval as well. Annie?
I think the number one thing for me is that the wayfinding system be trustworthy. In Chicago, kind of the running joke is, if I see cyclists go here, you just never take that road. They're unsafe. They're, if it's just sort of a joke. So my big thing would be trustworthy. I would want it for what exactly you were saying with like tourists, that basically people who don't live in Urbana would know this is a safe street to bike down. This is an understandable sign. It's a simple sign. You can read it while you're moving. You don't have to stop your bike and back up and say, did that make any sense? So I think a lot of it for me is about the routes, like what routes we're going to put these on and how we're going to, because if we can build, like, I actually almost envision it like a subway system, like how when you look at a subway map of New York or a subway map, because like these maps are great, but unless you're really into biking, you're not going to use it. I like the idea of some of it just being as simple as like a subway, like you can just move down these routes and you're not worried that you're going to end up on like University Avenue or something. So trustworthy is really important.
Any other input or guidance for Craig as they move forward? Jeff?
Yeah, I had just two comments. One, I have seen in other communities that they have used the signs to help encourage cycling as well. So they'll say 5 minutes to Follinger or whatever. So somebody that normally would drive would say, hey, it's only a 5-minute bike ride, and I can, that's easy enough or whatever.
So that depends on how fast you bicycle.
Definitely. It also depends
Google
how fast
biking?
you get in and out of your car and find a place to park. The other thought I had was also, and this goes back to the Greenways and Trails has already identified a little bit of signage, but for some of the recreational trails, kind of creating a brand that somebody can say, I'm going to go ride the, I don't know any trail names that we have in town.
Kickapoo Trail.
Yeah, right.
Someday.
Or like I envision like I'm going to go ride the green line.
Yeah,
I'm going to go ride the
exactly.
red line.
The
I'm going to
606 or
yeah,
whatever,
or just even that you would be like if I do the green line, that's going to be 6 miles. If I do the red line, it'll be this, because we do have a lot of churn in this city.
Right.
So I think it would be really fun if people were like, oh, I did the red line, the green line, and obviously it leads into what is it called the green loop or the green loop, which is what the park district wants to do. So it leads into that. So I know in Chicago they would do a thing if you biked like the length of the lakefront, you'd get a T-shirt or something, something like that. But I just think I could just see a lot of things like that. Like you do the green loop, you get this thing. You do the red loop, So it's it's complicated, but basically you just gotta think like a minimalist. Think like a minimalist.
Jeff, what were you saying?
No, that's exactly what I was saying. Thanks, Annie. Yeah, if you can create a brand for it, then it might encourage people to do the different, just like she said, I haven't done the red line yet, so I'm going to do that this weekend. And then, when they're talking to their friends, they can say, have you done the green line yet? It's gorgeous in the fall, or I don't know what they'd say, but something along those lines.
Has anybody ridden in a community and they were like really impressed by a wayfinding?
I have pictures of, I've been taking pictures of wayfinding all around, good and bad. For when I was in Florida, I couldn't figure out why they would stick a pole with a sign in the middle of a trail when there was absolutely no way you could have turned off the trail anywhere along the route. And so they paid a lot of money to stick a pole with a sign with the name of the route. So, there's some things that people do. I wonder why they spent the money, but I mostly take pictures of things that I think are good. And so I would be happy to share those with you. I've got them by community. I've posted some on Facebook, the Champaign-Urbana cyclist page, but I could sort of put some folders together and put them in a Google Drive and share them with the group as examples of places that different wayfinding systems.
Yeah, that would be great. I wouldn't mind driving on a Saturday someplace to check something out. I can think a little bit abstractly like a planner, but I'm more of a I want to see it, I want to touch it, feel it, kind of thing.
Columbia, Missouri was where I was last week, and they had a pretty good wayfinding system that looked fairly simple. The other question for us is how much money do we want to spend on signs?
Right.
And so that's always a question that you have as a consultant for a client is, do you want to be able to make these in-house, market, contract them out? How much are we talking about spending? And Columbia's were pretty simple. The other thing that they had, which I thought was really interesting, is they'd gotten a grant, I assume at some point. They had little nature signs along the way with things about the trees and the animals and the plants and some historic markers. I think we've got some people on the city council who'd really love to incorporate some of that into our wayfinding. Lincoln sites, for example, we could include. So those are all options for us, but we also have to keep in mind cost if we want to build the system out. How much do we want to spend doing the signs, and how frequently do you want to install them, because those all have an impact on cost.
Right.
Could we almost think too, though, of, in my mind, I'm also seeing like when you're hiking and you're on the red trail or the green trail, or so maybe even just to take it abstract to that level, that not just bike infrastructure, but if you've seen good like hiking infrastructure, or because you do want to know that you're on the green trail, and that green trail is actually going to get you. Hopefully, you're not going to get lost and eaten by bears. But that's kind of, because then you could add in the historical markers. You could be the "you are here" on the system. All that.
And I guess also if, potentially you could market some of these trails to people outside the community that, come to Urbana and go along the historical Lincoln Trail or whatever, and it could be a tourism draw as well.
The Park District has been going on quite a few visits for the KRT as we look at, a trailhead for Weaver Park. So we also have some examples. We went up last year for conference. We visited the 606, which is clearly its kind of own beast. But also we went to CalSag, Old Plank Rail, and when we were in St. Louis 2 weeks ago, we also visited some trails. So we also have some examples. And I think maybe it's a no-brainer, but consistency across your signs. You don't want your sign pointing you towards a community to be different than your sign that says how many miles to the next park or the next trailhead. It is peace of mind to see consistency across the signs, and that you're on the right path.
I think the 606 has good signage, if I am correct.
It will be hard to get lost on that.
True.
For those who don't know, the 606 is a elevated rail line that was converted into a multi-use path system in Chicago. And so you have to go up or down to get off. But yeah, I've used some of the trails in the Chicago suburbs, and there were some times when I really could not figure out how to get from point A to point B, and it was usually in those transitions between trail infrastructure and having to use street infrastructure to make a connection. And I'm assuming it's because like the Forest Preserve had the trail wayfinding, but the city had not been involved in that. And so when you went off the trail, you didn't have the information about where to go and how to get back on. So in our plan, we have the luxury of being able to put all of that together so that people don't have that issue when they're making those transitions. Any other input for Craig?
Yeah, thank you for the input.
Great. So that's the end of our new business, and we are down to announcements. Do we have any announcements? I think Lily has an event tomorrow morning.
It's pretty cool, but it is. Tomorrow morning we're going to be counting bikes on campus. So a group of volunteers in the from the community will be meeting, and we'll be walking around campus. A lot of us will have
You're
smartphones.
Counting bikes that are parked.
That are parked.
Yes.
Yes. They don't have to be parked to anything, but they will not be riding. So it's during a class time, and we will be trying to get a number and location information about where bikes are, where they're parked, whether it's on a rack or not. And it's meant to show a very interesting picture about campus bicycle usage at the end of it. In the past, we have never successfully posted this information publicly, and we're going to be working very hard in November to get this information out to, especially to our volunteers, but for everybody, we'll be getting that GIS information. But most volunteers will be collecting the information straight on their smartphone.
Cool. I've helped with that in the past, although I did it on paper, so it would be fun to do it on your phone.
Yeah. Use a little bit of GIS
Is
technology.
it too late for people to volunteer?
Absolutely not. Oh my gosh.
So where would they go?
At 9:00 in the morning, I will be doing a training on how to download it, what's the login and password, go over like what we're counting, and this bicycle is kind of half a bike, or this is just one wheel locked, answering questions like that and kind of troubleshooting. And
where will that be?
That'll be done at the Illini Union on the south patio, so the quad-facing side of the Illini Union.
Okay.
Be a lot of fun.
So 9:00.
Preferably at some time.
Illini Union South Patio.
Absolutely. Anytime from
Although
now
people may see this
to
long
9:00 in the
afterwards, but-
morning too. If you want to email me, I can have a place for you to go right away. But if you just show up, that's awesome too.
Okay.
I'll always have a census block for someone to count.
Okay. Any other announcements? Yes, Craig.
The MCOR project is back out for bid. So November 4th is the IDOT bid opening. So let's cross our fingers. We get good results.
And didn't we just win didn't Champaign, I know this is Urbana, but didn't Champaign get some money from IDOT? And
Yeah,
didn't
that
Urbana
was
get some money from
The
ITEP.
ITEP grant, yes.
Yeah.
I forget how many millions of dollars, but.
$2
it was-
million for Champaign, I believe.
Yeah, for the bridge, the Kirby, was the Kirby?
Bradley.
Bradley.
Yes, Bradley Avenue Bridge over I-57. So we were very excited about it.
And the Park District got
Yeah,
one.
and then the Park District also got for the south end of Crystal Lake Park, connecting from the Park and Broadway intersection over to Church. And clearly people are walking there. Like, in one day I saw 2 people with canes walking on the path that's worn into the grass. And a week later we got the grant, and
Great.
everybody's incredibly
Very
pumped about it.
exciting. Yeah.
I have one exciting announcement kind of like this. We're finally adding a sidewalk along Stadium Drive where lots of people
Yay.
are walking and there's nothing there at all except maybe like a tree in the middle of a dirt path. So that's really exciting. We're finally moving forward on that project.
Great. I have one quick announcement. We have 4 new youth instructors, bicycle instructors. I held a class on Saturday, and one of them was a new Urbana PE teacher, so I was very excited about that. We had people coming from other communities as well. We had 2 people come from out of town for the instruction, and then we had some local folks too. So that it's a 4-hour class, so it's a much less demanding process to become certified as a youth instructor through the League of American Bicyclists. So unless anybody else has another announcement, we'll go to future topics. Last time we had on future topics the Lincoln Avenue pedestrian crossing study, and I don't know where you are with that, but I thought I would just ask.
We've been collecting data, but it'll be worked on a start of it over the winter period to
Okay.
spring, so it'll be a while.
So it's going to be a while before we have
Yeah.
anything. Okay.
Yeah.
I was, we are doing, moving forward with a volunteer snow removal project in partnership with the Urbana School District. We're hoping to launch that in December, and if we're a little behind schedule right now, but if we have everything up and running, I could ask someone to come and do a presentation about that at our November meeting, so that you all could see how we've set it up for people to volunteer to remove snow in different locations around the community. We prioritized specific routes that are safe routes to school and high bus transit user locations and areas from the study that Kuwats did, looking at high priority areas for pedestrian movement and use of facilities. So I think that might be of interest, so we could put that on for November, and we'll confirm that we're far enough along to do that before the meeting.
I was curious if it's at all possible to, because I was just curious if it's all possible to talk about, have statistical data presented on crashes. Like I heard there was a crash on Washington Avenue near my house. And then we know someone, 2 people were killed on University Avenue. So it's my understanding, if we're moving towards Vision Zero, that 10 to 12% of accidents happen like in similar spaces, and so then that's how you know how to put your resources towards those 10 to 12% of the areas. So I'm not sure if there's anything. I have no idea how we'd gather that data, or like doorings or people getting hit by cars, or I have no idea.
That data is collected, and there is a report done every couple of years, selected intersection crash data. That data comes back to us from the state, and it is always a couple of years before we get it. So the report, we don't have the most recent crashes in there. And so we have that. Kuwats has it's on their website. We could have staff give us sort of an overview of the identified high crash locations and types of crashes. All of that data is in there, and we could have somebody just sort of do a presentation on it. I'm sure that'll be part of the plan. It was part of the bicycle master plan. The bike crashes were included in there. But it's hard, I think, I guess it's frustrating that we don't have the data faster.
I mean, because we all hear about, gun violence, or 2 people killed by a gun, or 3 people injured by guns, and we actually have similar, if not more, violence happening with cars. And so I just wish there were ways we could kind of just be more aware of it.
Well, they are reported in the newspaper, and I don't know, how reliable that's considered, but for a lot of studies, you do go back and collect newspaper information to get some kind of
Craig,
idea.
you wanted to
Well,
say something?
We have access, like I have access to crash reports that the Urbana Police Department prepares, which is, of course, confidential information, but those are in basically a list format. They're not compiled. So what we do, though, is when we go to work on a specific location, we cull those reports for, like, particularly the last 5 years. You know, like on Bradley as an example, and did the bike lanes. I'm going through for the last 5 years, and then I analyze all of the crash data and compile that. But I mean, even there was, I'd say probably, I'll just throw a number out, probably 40. But of the 40, there was, I think, only 1 or 2 pedestrian or bicycle. Most are car type stuff. A lot of leaving the road or side swipes. So what I'm getting at is we don't have like a database. We don't get crash data and we compile it. That we have a massive amount of data, but we don't have a way to compile it. That is something that when we move towards Vision Zero, we'll have to talk about more. Obviously, there's time associated with doing that, and we'd have to figure that out. Now, what Cynthia's pointing out is something that Regional Plan Commission does with the data that they get back, which is also reported to the Department of Transportation. So they will identify the high crash locations within the Champaign-Urbana region. And we always look at those. Thankfully, most of them are not within Urbana. And then, of course, we also know that we hear feedback from the bike community on difficult intersections, which I think you're going to see as listed in the master plan update here too.
Yep.
And the majority of like bike and pedestrian interactions with cars are just not reported because there's no.
And that's a good point.
And that, so I don't know. And also it's like you make it safe for a cyclist, you're going to make it safe for a car.
Right.
So that's just one, you know.
Yeah, so I wish we could give you a statistical analysis, but we don't have that a way to do that. But I think the point that you just said is important. There are a lot of near miss type things that do not get reported. The other thing too is if it's a, even if it's just a fender bender, but it's a minor incident, those don't get reported either. So we should just all keep that in mind.
Yeah, we know that bike and ped crashes are underreported
Right.
because police are not called usually if there's not a motor vehicle involved on a roadway. So
Well, and even when there is one involved, a lot of times
that does,
they aren't.
yeah, that does happen. I certainly received the call from my daughter that she was hit by a motorist in a crosswalk, and I have watched this happen myself. The pedestrian jumps up and says, "I'm fine." It's a human reaction to say, "I'm fine," and leave.
Yep.
I think that's just programmed into us. If,
My son was hit, and he just blocked his unrideable bike and walked away.
Yeah, if you can get up, you tend to get up and leave, and then it's not reported. So I think that's another issue.
But I would just like to say though, it's like something as bike and pedestrian advocates is we can make it clear to vehicular drivers, just that if we're not trying to take away your right to drive, we're making safer spaces for you to drive in. We're actually lowering your insurance. We're lowering accidents rates. We're actually creating a safe ecosystem for everybody. It's not just a safe ecosystem just for bikes or just for pedestrians. It's actually going to be, Bradley Avenue is going to become a safer ecosystem for cars now. So I think that's important to not have it be a this person versus that person. It's actually making it safer for everyone.
I have a report too. I've got a Vision Zero policy for Columbia, Missouri. It was a mayor's task force on pedestrian safety that was done. That was given to me last week while I was down there. I was visiting one of the city council members, and it's an interesting final report. They did this all with a task force of citizens who came up with recommendations. And did the sort of data collection that we're talking about. So, I think that is something that we should do. That was one of the reasons I wanted the Vision Zero policy to get attention as sort of a standalone policy for the city. That it's not just an issue for bikes or peds. It's an issue for all roadway users, and I'm happy to share that with staff. You can take a look at what they came up with, and as sort of a model or an example of how other places have done it.
Sure.
I
So-
should say that also the city council person that was involved with this works for America Walks. So, you know, he's got a lot of tools at his disposal for helping the community, facilitating the community to develop their policy.
So I'll have two agenda items in November. One, of course, would be to bring the bicycle wayfinding plan back in greater detail. And then, but the other one, the most important one, is we're getting some movement on the bike master plan.
Great.
So this Friday, we're actually we're reconvening our steering committee meeting. We've vetted out everything with staff and some commenters, and we're ready to move this forward, I think. So we want to bring it back to BPAC. I know BPAC had approved it before. We want to bring it back to discuss it. So after Friday, I envision we'll be sending out to BPAC members as soon as we can any of the updates. That way you guys can have some time to digest what was changed. And then the idea would be that it would move forward to Plan Commission and then ultimately to Committee of the Whole and Council. We would really like to get this thing, we think it's important to get it adopted this
Yes.
this fiscal or this calendar year,
I agree.
if we can. It'll be a little challenging when we get towards the holidays, just because of schedules and things like
Yeah.
that. But I think that's some promising news. So,
Yep, I would really like to see it adopted so we can move forward.
yeah.
Okay, great. All right, with that, we have completed our agenda, and I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
I would motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We stand adjourned.